They thought he was just a quiet Marine veteran, living with his loyal German shepherd in the snowy mountains of Montana, until the sky above Skyhaven split open with the roar of 8 enemy jets, hunting a young pilot barely clinging to life. No orders came, no reinforcements arrived, and in that moment of silence, Elias Calhoun made a choice that broke every rule he once lived by. He launched into an old AT-6, driven not by duty, but by a promise he made long ago, to never let another life slip through his fingers. Beside him, Coda sensed danger in the air long before any radar screamed, guiding Elias straight into a valley where instinct fought metal and fate balanced on the blade. The chase that followed twisted through frozen cliffs, where a single mistake meant death, and where a Marine and his dog uncovered a plot darker than the storm they were flying through. Every turn, every dive, every breath dragged them deeper into a truth no one at Skyhaven was prepared for, one that would change the future of the base forever. And before we continue, tell me, where do you think this story truly began? If this hooked you, like, comment, and subscribe to follow the rest of the journey. Morning in northern Montana never arrived all at once. It seeped into the world gently, sliding over the jagged skyline of the Absaroka Range before spilling down into the forests of Marine Ridge Base. Frost clung stubbornly to the bare ground, sparkling like broken glass under the soft rising sun. Elias Calhoun finished his last push-up and let himself fall onto his back, chest rising and falling in steady, disciplined breaths. The cold air turned every exhale into pale mist. For a moment, he simply stared up at the sky, clean, blue, unbothered. The kind of sky that made you believe things were peaceful, even when they weren't. At 35, Elias carried the kind of strength that wasn't for show. Dense muscle from years of war, scars that still reacted to the weather, and a posture that never fully relaxed. His hair was kept in a high and tight cut, dark brown and trimmed with military precision. Light stubble framed his jaw, the rugged kind that refused to disappear no matter how often he shaved. His eyes were gray-blue, steady but always moving, never trusting stillness for too long. He sat up, rolling his shoulders until something clicked faintly near an old shrapnel scar. "Still holding," he muttered. A metallic jingle drifted across the frosted yard. Coda emerged from behind the workout benches, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a sable coat that rippled from charcoal to tan with every movement. A single white patch sat beneath his throat, sharp-edged like a small badge of honor. His deep brown eyes were alert, focused, always aware of the world in a way Elias trusted more than radar. The dog approached with measured steps, nose twitching at the lingering scent of sweat and early morning frost. "You're judging my form again," Elias said. Coda huffed, tail sweeping once across the air. But then his posture shifted. Ears pricked forward, body stiffening, gaze locking on the empty sky above the northern ridgeline. Elias followed his stare. Nothing. No birds, no clouds, no contrails. The kind of nothing that didn't feel empty at all. "What is it?" Elias asked quietly. Coda didn't blink. His breath shortened. A low vibration, more breath than sound, rose from his throat. Then it ended. Coda relaxed as if someone had released a hidden switch. He nudged Elias's leg with his nose, demanding the usual scratches. But a sliver of tension lingered in Elias's chest. A dog like Coda didn't react to nothing. The base stirred to life. Trucks rumbled awake, forming breathy plumes of exhaust. Marines gathered for roll call and scattered toward their duties. Elias shrugged into his worn M65 field jacket, olive green, faded from years of sun and snow. The jacket had followed him across continents, patched in places, torn in others, but still reliable, just like him. Coda walked beside his left heel, matching his pace with trained precision. The morning passed uneventfully. Elias checked paperwork inside the operations hut, assisted two corporals who still confused half the logistics codes, and reviewed the emergency evacuation maps posted on the wall. But something felt off. Not wrong, just waiting, as if a breath held somewhere above the mountains had not yet been released. Just before noon, Elias stepped outside for a break. Coda trotted ahead, ears perked, nose lifted toward the breeze. Then it came. A tremor, faint, low, almost imagined, like the ghost of thunder shaking somewhere far underground. Elias felt it in his boots. Coda felt it everywhere. The dog's body snapped rigid, tail pointing straight, eyes locked on the empty sky with unnerving intensity. A young private, Carter Jensen, walked out of the barracks at the same moment. 19, tall and a little underfed looking, with sandy hair that stuck out unevenly beneath his cover. His face still had a softness to it, the kind that hadn't yet been chiseled by years of discipline. Coda, you good?" Carter asked. Coda didn't move. Carter blinked, suddenly uneasy without knowing why. "We get earthquakes here? I swear I felt something." Elias scanned the sky again. "Not earthquakes." Carter forced an awkward laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess I'm hearing things." He gave Elias a quick nod and hurried off toward the motor pool, eager to escape the strange tension. Coda finally relaxed, but only by a fraction. Twice now. That was enough to rattle something old inside Elias. Patterns mattered. Patterns had saved his life more times than bullets ever had. The operations hut was warm but stale with old coffee and the hum of fluorescent lights. Elias asked the duty sergeant, an older man with a weathered brow and a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, if there had been any unscheduled air traffic. "Nothing," the sergeant said. "You expecting a show?" "Just checking." "Relax, Calhoun. Montana sky's been quiet all day." Quiet. Too quiet. But Elias let it go. He knew better than to push when he didn't have evidence, just instincts sharpened by years in the Marine Raiders and a dog whose senses rarely lied. Evening came early. The temperature plunged, and the sky deepened into a darker blue. In the chow hall, Elias sat alone with Coda at his feet. Conversations buzzed around him. Young Marines bragging about PT scores, arguing over football games, laughing too loud about nothing at all. Elias ate mechanically, listening but not absorbing. His mind drifted back to the sound, the tremor, the silence afterward. Coda lifted his head from between his paws, ears angling toward the door every time someone new entered, hyper-aware, hyper-focused. Elias reached down and brushed his hand over the dog's neck. "You feel it too." It wasn't a question. After dinner, they stepped outside into the crisp night. Stars glittered above the mountain silhouettes. The base had gone quiet enough that Elias could hear the faint mechanical clink of someone locking the armory door across the yard. He walked toward the edge of the base where the asphalt met a lonely line of grass and the dark wall of pine trees beyond. Coda stayed close, closer than usual. Elias breathed in the cold, letting it settle into his lungs. Then he felt it, a second tremor, stronger than before. It hummed through the ground, subtle but undeniable, like the air itself was vibrating. Elias straightened, heart quickening. Coda reacted instantly. The shepherd's back arched, fur rising like a wave along his spine. A deep, warning growl rolled from his chest, low, primal, the kind of sound animals make when nature itself tells them something is wrong. Elias's instincts snapped awake. Not fear, readiness. "Coda," he said softly. The dog ignored him, eyes fixed on the mountains. Elias followed that gaze once more. Nothing. No lights, no engines, no movement. But the silence felt different now, electric, stretched thin. Whatever was coming, Coda felt it first. Whatever it wasn't natural. Elias placed a hand on Coda's shoulder. The muscles beneath his palm were tight as steel cables. "Third time means it's real," he whispered. The dog didn't break his stare, and neither did he. "Whatever you are, Elias murmured to the darkening sky. "You're close." The wind didn't answer, but something behind it did. Something only a dog and a man who'd seen too much could recognize. Something that would shatter the quiet Montana sky before morning. Dawn had not yet touched Montana when Elias Calhoun woke to the sharp, restless pacing of Coda inside the dim barracks room. The German shepherd moved back and forth with unusual urgency, claws tapping lightly against the concrete floor. Elias blinked away sleep, sitting up on the edge of his cot. His breath made faint clouds in the cold room. The base heaters always slept harder than the Marines did. Coda halted suddenly, his head lifted, his ears locked forward. Elias froze. There it was again, that tremor. Faint, low, almost unintelligible, like a giant exhaling from somewhere deep beneath the earth. Except this time it carried a hum. Metallic. Wrong. Elias stood, pulling on his M65 field jacket. "Show me," he whispered. Coda moved immediately toward the door, tail rigid, posture sharp with instinctive purpose. Outside, the pre-dawn sky was a shade of bruised blue, air crisp, unmoving. Snow listed lazily around the dim security lights. The base was still, engines silent, barracks dark. The world didn't look like anything was coming, but Coda's growl said otherwise. Elias crouched next to him. "You're hearing something I can't." Coda's ears twitched toward the northern ridgeline. His expression, alert, troubled, distrustful, tightened something inside Elias's chest. He knew that look. He had seen it in war zones, moments before ambushes that radar and intel had missed. A dog's instincts were old, older than any military system humans had built. Elias straightened. "All right, we checked the perimeter." He moved quickly despite the cold. Coda trotted beside him with purposeful steps. When they reached the far edge of the base, the line where asphalt ended and thick pines began, Elias stopped. The tremor came again, stronger than any previous one, heavy enough to rattle the chain-link fence. And this time, Elias heard it. A distant rhythmic thumping, a sound that built, faded, then built again, like blades cutting through air at a speed that didn't belong to helicopters. Not here, not now. Elias frowned. "That's not right." Coda pressed closer to him, gaze locked upward. Then an unnatural flicker crossed the sky, almost invisible like a ripple in the cold morning air. Elias blinked. There was nothing there. No aircraft lights, no contrails, no movement. Just the quiet, enormous emptiness of Montana dawn. But the tremor beneath their boots pulsed a fourth time, long enough to make Elias's breath catch. Something was out there, moving fast, moving low, and moving quiet. Too quiet. As they returned toward the base interior, Sergeant Nora Bennett emerged from the communications hut, rubbing her eyes with one hand and holding a thermos with the other. She was in her early 30s, small but solidly built, with dark hair pulled tight beneath her headset, and a permanent look of tired competence etched across her sharp features. Her uniform was crisp, though she wore it like someone who had stopped noticing the cold a long time ago. She paused when she saw Elias and the tense line of Coda's body. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, voice gravelly from the long night shift. "Not yet," Elias replied, "but something's off." Nora sighed, taking a drink from the thermos. "If this is about your dog acting weird again, it's not just him," Elias said quietly. "I heard something this time. Low frequency. Close." Nora lowered the thermos. "Low frequency?" "Aircraft level low." Her brows lifted, the sarcasm gone. "Our radar's clean." "Maybe it shouldn't be." Coda growled suddenly short and sharp. Nora stiffened. "Okay," she said, her voice shifting from casual to aware. "Let's check the equipment again." She turned toward the hut, but the moment her hand touched the door, the lights flickered. Once, twice, and then the entire building fell into darkness. Nora froze. "No, no, no, no. Don't you do this to me at 6 in the morning." The emergency backup kicked in a second later, humming weakly as the hut glowed with dim red lights. Nora muttered a string of curses and rushed inside. Elias followed. Inside, the comms room was a chaos of blinking lights, screens rebooting, radios hiccuping, the radar terminal flickering like an old TV trying to hold its picture. "What the hell?" Nora hissed, pulling her headset down and tapping rapidly across the console. Elias leaned over the main screen. It was blank, not offline, not in error mode. Blank. Like something was suppressing it or jamming it. Coda emitted a low growl, pawing the ground. Elias whispered, "Something's here." Nora shook her head. "That's impossible. Nobody gets past NORAD." "They just did." Her jaw tightened. She typed sharply, initiating a diagnostic sweep. "If someone's jamming us, the system should still register noise. Static ghost echoes." The screen flickered. And then a single dot appeared. Small, faint, northwest quadrant. Nora's eyes widened. "That's too fast. Whatever that is, it's..." The dot vanished, completely. Nora straightened slowly. "Elias, that thing was moving at least Mach 1.2 at low altitude. No civilian aircraft does that." "No friendly aircraft does that either," Elias murmured. Nora looked at him. "You think it's hostile?" Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. Coda answered for him. The dog suddenly backed toward the doorway, fur raised, issuing a guttural warning growl that reverberated in the small room. Nora shivered. "I've never heard him make that sound." "That's the kind of sound he made the night we walked into an insurgent triple ambush in Kunar," Elias said quietly. 3 minutes before it happened." Nora's face paled. "Jesus." Outside, the first light of dawn spilled over the horizon, soft and warm. Then the sky contradicted itself. A thunderclap. One that didn't belong to weather exploded somewhere above the mountains. It wasn't a boom. It was a concussion. A blast wave that punched the air and rattled every window across Marine Ridge Base. Elias flinched. Nora gasped. Coda barked, once loud and instinctive, then stared upward in absolute, unmoving silence. Elias whispered, "Did you hear that?" Nora swallowed hard. Everyone heard that. The sky followed with a rolling echo of metallic tremors, distant, but getting closer. Too close. Then faintly, like a whisper bleeding through broken static, the comms terminal crackled. A woman's voice, strained, shaking, barely there. "Is anyone... Copy... Mayday... May..." Nora's eyes snapped to the screen. "That's a distress call." Elias felt a knife of cold carve through his chest. Coda whimpered, pacing urgently. The static sharpened into horrified clarity. "Under fire, multiple bogeys, engines failing, I'm hit..." Ava Hartley, the young pilot, the one who shouldn't have been anywhere near danger. Nora slammed the transmit button. "This is Marine Ridge Base. Ava, say again." But the signal dissolved into electric chaos. Elias stepped back, breath tightening. Whatever was coming. It wasn't just noise anymore, and Ava Hartley was already inside its jaws. The radar flickered one last time and revealed the truth. 8 signatures, fast, descending, spread out like a hunting formation, slicing through the mountain air straight toward Montana. Nora whispered, "Dear God." Elias whispered nothing. He was already moving. Coda followed, matching his urgency. They stepped outside just as the sky trembled again. The first enemy aircraft burst from behind the ridgeline, low, fast, and silent as a thrown blade. Elias swallowed the metallic taste of adrenaline. "They're here." Coda's bark echoed off the mountains, and for the first time since he joined the Marines, Elias felt the sky itself preparing to break. Ava Hartley had always loved the moments before takeoff. Even now, sitting strapped into the narrow cockpit of a T-7A trainer, breathing recycled oxygen and jet fuel, she felt that familiar pull in her chest, the quiet thrill that came right before the Earth let go. At 24, she was small by pilot standards, 5'6" with lean arms and wiry muscles earned from years of pushing herself harder than anyone asked. Her hair, naturally a pale honey blonde, was pulled back into a low ponytail tucked under the edge of her flight helmet. Stray strands clung to her forehead with sweat. Her skin, fair but lightly freckled across the nose, flushed with focus. Her eyes, a bright, unguarded blue, stared out at the world with a mixture of curiosity and stubborn resolve that had driven instructors half crazy and secretly made them proud. This was supposed to be a clean test flight. A simple early morning run out of Skyhaven Airfield over the mountains and back, collecting data on a new radar package strapped to her jet. No live fire, no threats, no surprises. The kind of mission they gave the promising ones to season them, not to break them. Then the sky tore open. The first warning sign had been the radar freeze, her screen suddenly flatlined in mid-sweep, every target vanishing at once. Then the jamming started. A harsh digital squeal punched into her ears through the headset, making her wince. "Skyhaven, this is Echo 2, she had said, voice tight. "I've got heavy interference on all bands. Can you confirm?" Only static answered. A second later, her threat receiver screamed awake. Now her gloved hands tightened on the control stick as the warning tone rose in pitch. Fast, urgent. Missile lock. Ava's heart slammed against her ribs. "No! No, no!" She craned her head, scanning the sky. The morning light washed the peaks in pink and gold, deceptive in its beauty. And then she saw them. 8 shapes knifing through the dawn, low and fast, their silhouettes too sleek and aggressive to be anything but hostile. FA-50s or something in that class, light attack jets, not supposed to be here, not supposed to be over Montana at all. One of them peeled off, lining up behind her. The tone in her headset went from urgent to shrieking. A white dart detached from its wing. The first missile. Ava slammed the stick left, dragging the training jet into a hard brake turn that yanked the breath from her lungs and turned the cockpit into a centrifuge. Her vision tunneled, gray crowding its way into the corners. The missile chased her turn like a hungry thing. "Come on! Come on!" The snow-covered slope below leaped closer. At the very last moment, she snapped the jet in the opposite direction, barely skimming the spine of a ridge. The missile tried to follow and caught a pillar of rock instead. The explosion rippled behind her, shaking every bolt in the airframe. Shrapnel pinged like hail across her fuselage. The jet shuddered. Ava tasted metal. "Skyhaven, this is Echo 2. I am under attack. Multiple bogeys. I repeat, I am under attack." Static clawed at her words, shredding them before they could climb out of the valley. A second missile warning screamed to life. Her oxygen felt too hot. Her fingers went cold. She thought briefly, desperately, of her father sitting at a kitchen table somewhere in Iowa, drinking bad coffee and waiting for a call she promised she'd make as soon as schedule calms down. She thought of all the times she had told herself danger was part of the job, but it would never really find her. "Not like this," she whispered. "Not yet." She forced herself to breathe, to think. Her instructor's voices echoed in her head. Energy management, terrain masking, use the mountains, don't panic, never climb when you can disappear sideways. Ava dropped lower, dragging her jet along the contour of the land, forcing the enemy to follow her into terrain they didn't know. It bought her seconds. Seconds were life. But there were 8 of them, and she was alone. The sonic boom hit Marine Ridge Base like a hammer. Windows rattled, mess trays clattered. A few Marines ducked instinctively, looking up at the ceiling as if expecting it to come down. Elias felt the blast through his chest. Not the dull thud of artillery, not the rolling growl of distant thunder. This was sharp, clean, the air itself shoved aside by something moving far too fast. Coda barked once, a loud, explosive sound that bounced off the barracks wall. The dog's eyes were wide, ears trembling between aggression and fear. In the comm hut, Sergeant Nora Bennett nearly spilled her coffee as the radar finally sputtered back to life, just long enough to flash 8 incoming tracks. Then everything glitched again, the jammer punching holes in their picture. The distress call that followed was broken and full of pain, but it cut straight through the noise into every human ear in the room. Under fire, multiple bogeys, engines failing, I'm hit. Nora's face lost all its color. That's one of Skyhaven's birds. Elias didn't need to ask which one. He'd been at the airfield enough to recognize Ava Hartley's voice. Bright, eager, always a little too quick to laugh, the way young pilots often sounded before reality caught them. Now it was jagged with terror. "Can you raise her?" he asked. Nora shook her head, fingers flying over the console. "They're chewing us up electronically. Every time I get a lock on her frequency, it slides." She slammed her fist lightly against the side of the panel. "Damn it, I'm not losing a kid on my frequency." Coda paced in a tight circle, restless, nails scraping the floor. He let out a strange sound, a whine that rose into something almost like a howl and then cut off, as if he'd stopped himself. Elias thought of that night in Kunar province, the triple ambush, the way the village dogs had gone completely silent. 5 minutes before the first RPG streaked in, he felt his stomach knot. "What about Skyhaven?" he asked. "Are they seeing this?" "I don't know what they're seeing," Nora replied. "But they're not talking. Our uplinks shot to hell." "What about the old net?" he asked. Nora blinked. "The what?" "The legacy band. Pre-upgrade. You still have that hardware in storage?" She hesitated. "We're not supposed to use that unless the modern stuff fails," Elias finished for her. "Nora, this is failure." She stared at him for a heartbeat. Then she nodded once. "Gear locker in the back," she said. "I'll keep punching this. You see what you can wake up?" The equipment cage behind the comm room smelled like dust and cold metal and things the Marine Corps had forgotten but never quite thrown away. Elias stepped inside and flicked on the bare bulb overhead. Light fell on shelves of old radios, coiled antenna wire, and battered cases stamped with unit designations from wars that now lived mostly in documentaries and fading memory. Coda stopped at the threshold. His ears were up, but his body was rigid, tail held straight out. Not fearful, not relaxed, but something in between. He wouldn't cross the line. Elias looked back at him. "What is it?" Coda's gaze drifted upward, to a corner of the ceiling where shadows pooled the deepest. There was nothing there, just aging plaster and a cobweb. But the dog's lip twitched slightly, a silent snarl at something only he could sense. For a strange, fleeting second, Elias felt like they weren't alone in that room. Not ghosts, not anything mystical, but the residue of all the voices that had once spoken into these radios, all the calls for support, all the Mayday, Mayday, and we're hit, and tell my family, hanging somewhere in the circuitry. He shook off the feeling, focusing on the task. "We're not letting her become one of those echoes," he said quietly. "Maybe to Coda, maybe to the empty air." The dog lowered his head, as if he understood. Elias found what he was looking for on the third shelf from the bottom, a rugged olive-drab radio unit the size of a small toolbox with worn knobs and a manual frequency dial. It had been cutting edge once, before newer systems pushed it into storage. The thing he loved about old hardware was simple. It didn't care what the enemy was jamming now. It lived in a different world. He slung the radio's strap over his shoulder and grabbed a collapsible antenna. When he stepped back into the main comms room, Nora shot him a disbelieving look. "You're kidding. You got a better idea?" he asked. "Because your nice modern setup is having a panic attack." She opened her mouth, then shut it. "Fine. Knock yourself out, Raider." Elias set the radio on a clear section of the table, extended the antenna, and spun the main dial slowly, listening for something beneath the hiss. Coda sat beside him now, pressed so close his fur brushed against Elias's leg, eyes closed as if he were listening too. Somewhere between two dead frequencies, a voice cracked through. "Losing altitude. Controls sluggish. Does anyone copy?" "Ava." Elias leaned over the radio, thumb on the transmit switch. "Echo 2, this is Marine Ridge Base. We read you faint but clear. Say your position. Static crackled back. No numbers, no coordinates, just her ragged breathing. Coda's head jerked toward the door, ears stabbing forward. He growled low, turning in place, then trotted toward the exit as if being pulled by a string. "Where are you going?" Nora called after the dog. Elias grabbed the radio and followed. "He thinks the signal's stronger outside." "That's not how radios—" Nora began, then stopped herself. "You know what? At this point, sure. Follow the dog." Outside, the dawn had finally broken, painting the snowfields and trees in pale gold. Coda moved with purpose across the yard, past the motor pool, toward the chain-link perimeter. The little radio hissed against Elias's hip, Ava's faint voice occasionally surfacing and sinking again like someone drowning under deep waves. By the time they reached the far fence line, the signal had sharpened. "Mountain Ridge. Can't climb. They're still on me. Echo 2. This is Calhoun at Marine Ridge," he said. "I hear you. Stay low. Use the terrain. Help is coming." He didn't know if she heard him, but saying it mattered. To her, if the words got through. To him, either way. Coda stopped near the fence, nose shoved against a section where the scrub grew thick and wild. He shoved his snout between the links, then backed up, pacing, whining now with a note of frustration. "You smell something?" Elias asked. The shepherd dug at the snow, scattering it aside to reveal disturbed soil beneath. Not just animal tracks, boot prints, multiple, leading away from the base into the trees. Elias's jaw tightened. Someone had been here. Recently. And from the depth and pattern of the prints, they'd been carrying weight, gear, boxes, something heavy. "Nora," he said into the radio, "get me a line to Skyhaven. Now. Trying. Uplink's still dirty. Tell whoever's in charge they've got more than a pilot in trouble. They've got a ground problem." Coda slipped under the lowest part of the fence where the supports had bent slightly outward. He looked back at Elias, eyes burning with urgency. Then he moved ahead, following the hidden trail into the tree line. Elias hesitated only a second. He checked his sidearm, adjusted the radio strap, and ducked under after the dog. The trees swallowed them almost immediately, the base and its routines vanishing behind trunks and snow and shadow. The signal from Ava wavered again, but didn't vanish. If anything, it grew stronger as he followed Coda around a rocky outcrop and into a shallow, hidden hollow in the forest floor. There, half camouflaged by tarps and snow-dusted branches, stood a squat concrete structure, old and forgotten by everyone except whoever had recently reclaimed it. Its metal door bore no unit markings, just a padlock that had been cut cleanly by bolt cutters now lying in the snow. Coda bared his teeth and growled, deep and steady. Elias stared at the door, the disturbed footprints around it, the faint echo of Ava's voice still bleeding through the radio at his side. In his gut, the pieces began to arrange themselves into a shape he did not like. Someone had set the board before the first move. Someone had jammed the sky, armed unseen aircraft, and built a hiding place right under their noses. And inside that concrete room, he was almost certain, was the first answer to a question no one on base had thought to ask. He stepped forward and wrapped his hand around the metal handle. It was cold enough to burn. The metal handle burned cold against Elias Calhoun's palm, as if the door itself were warning him not to enter. The concrete structure, half buried beneath layers of snow and camouflage netting, looked abandoned. Yet nothing about the scene felt like abandonment. The footprints were too fresh, the padlock too recently severed, and the air too still, as if holding its breath. Coda stood at Elias's side, hackles raised high. The shepherd's sable fur bristled from neck to tail, and a low growl vibrated through his chest. His ears locked forward, his pupils narrowed into sharp black points. The dog looked ready to launch into a fight against something Elias could not yet see. "Easy," Elias whispered, though his own pulse thudded with warning. He pushed the door open. The hinges groaned quietly, a tired, metallic complaint that echoed down a narrow concrete hallway. The smell that drifted out was an unsettling mix of oil, hot metal, and cold earth, a scent Elias knew too well from years in clandestine raids and improvised weapons caches overseas. Dim lights flickered along the ceiling, powered by a generator somewhere deeper inside. Coda stepped forward first, moving in a low, controlled stalk, nose twitching rapidly, detecting oil, sweat, gunpowder, and something electrical. Elias followed, his hand resting near his sidearm, but not drawing it yet. Marines didn't jump at shadows. They evaluated them. The hallway opened into a larger chamber, and the chamber was alive with machinery. Rows of sleek, unfamiliar consoles lined the walls, their screens glowing faintly with encrypted data streams. A heavy-duty server stack hummed in the corner, cables spiderwebbing across the floor. A table in the center held maps of the region, Montana, Idaho, parts of Canada, with red markings circling valleys and ridgelines. Black X's slashed across communication towers. A digital timer blinked on one of the screens, counting upward. Elias felt his jaw tighten. Whoever had been here wasn't just passing through. They were planning. Coda sniffed a crate near the wall. The dog froze, then backed away abruptly, issuing a sharp bark. Elias crossed the room and flipped the lid gently with the barrel of his sidearm. Inside were 5 compact electronic modules, each one the size of a paperback book, sleek metal with matte black casings, small ports along the edges, and one feature common to all, a triangular insignia he didn't recognize, stamped in dull silver. The devices were humming softly. Jammers, not amateur ones, advanced, military-grade, capable of disrupting wide-band frequencies. He exhaled slowly. So that's how you blind an entire county. Then a weak burst of static crackled from the analog radio at his hip. Losing altitude, controls, failing. Ava Hartley. Her voice was thinner now, strained, pulling at the last threads of air. A cold spike slid down his spine. He scanned the room again, searching for something, anything that could help her. A faint sound echoed from the hallway. Bootsteps, slow, measured, not rushing, returning. Coda's ears shot upward. His muscles went rigid. Elias ducked behind one of the metal server stacks, motioning the dog close. Coda pressed into him, silent, professional. The footsteps reached the doorway. Someone entered the room. A tall figure, wrapped in a winterized dark tactical coat, stepped into the dim light. The man had the posture of someone who had worn uniforms once, shoulders back, spine straight, but now moved with the confidence of someone operating outside any rules. His face was harsh, angular, weather-beaten, with a square jaw buried under a close-cropped steel-gray beard. A scar cut across his brow like a lightning bolt, disappearing into his hairline. His eyes, pale green and stripped of warmth, scanned the room with clinical efficiency. He moved differently from young mercenaries, not with swagger or carelessness, but with experience carved into bone. Late 40s, tall, powerfully built, hands gloved but steady, a leader. He walked up to the central table and checked the maps, adjusting one marker slightly. Then he muttered, voice low and gravel thick. "Everything's on schedule." Elias recognized that voice type. Someone who had commanded men, lost men, and decided the world owed him a debt. Someone capable, dangerous, and unburdened by conscience. Elias watched him reach for one of the jammer modules. The man pressed a button on the device, and a soft pulse rippled through the air. So subtle only Coda reacted, head whipping up sharply. The man smirked. "Good. Still stable." Then he turned toward the exit. Elias waited until the footsteps faded deeper into the hallway. He stood, motioning for Coda to stay beside him. "We need to move," he whispered. The dog didn't argue. As Elias moved toward the console to take pictures of the equipment, the screens flickered. A blue-tinted glitch crawled across one monitor, then stabilized. Lines of encrypted data rolled, then froze on a single phrase. A phrase that made Elias stop cold. "Target, Skyhaven pilot, Ava." A chill crept across his skin. Another line blinked on. Objective: down aircraft with minimal trace. Minimal trace. They weren't trying to destroy her jet. They were trying to bury the fact they were here at all. The last line appeared like a whisper from the machine. Ground unit ready for recovery. Elias stared. Recovery. They wanted Ava alive. Not rescue. Capture. His breath thickened. Someone wanted a pilot. For interrogation. Or leverage. He turned to Coda. We're not too late. Come on. Coda barked sharply. Urgent, as if agreeing. The tunnel outside the room split into two paths. The mercenary had gone right, deeper underground. Elias chose left, climbing upward toward the faint glow of the winter morning. He emerged into the cold air, heartbeat firing alarms through his chest. The base was still distant through the trees, but something above him stole his focus. The sky. Dark streaks cut across the dawn, shadows of aircraft slicing through the cloud line, and one, trailing smoke, struggling, limping through the valley. Ava. Her T-7 spiraled, trying desperately to keep altitude. Elias pressed the radio transmitter. Echo 2, this is Calhoun. If you hear me, bank south. Follow the valley. Do not climb. Static, then. Trying. Losing it. Help! Elias strained to hear more, but the signal crackled away. Not gone, but dying. Coda paced in front of him, whining, nose pointed skyward, as if pleading for Elias to do something, anything. I know, Elias murmured. Hold on. He sprinted back toward the tree line, heading straight for the base. Halfway through the woods, movement flashed between the pines. Two men in dark gear, mercenaries, were hauling a crate the size of a small refrigerator. Both were young, mid-20s, fit but not hardened, with shaved hair and identical tactical jackets. Their faces were partially covered by balaclavas, but Elias saw enough. Pale skin, sharp features, eyes empty of allegiance, except to whoever paid them. One of them spotted Elias. Contact! He shouted, dropping the crate. Elias drew his sidearm in a fluid motion, faster than either man expected. A warning shot cracked into the tree beside them. Coda lunged forward with a snarl, teeth bared. The mercenaries froze. Elias raised his voice, firm but controlled. Drop your weapons. The men hesitated. Their hands hovered near their rifles. Coda's snarl deepened. One mercenary finally obeyed, stepping back. The other didn't. He reached for his weapon. Elias fired, not to kill, but to break the man's grip. The round hit the ground near his hand. The man flinched violently and stumbled back. Elias stepped closer. Last chance. Weapons. Down. The men dropped them. Elias backed away, creating distance. This wasn't his fight to finish. Not yet. Ava was dying in the sky, and he had seconds to spare. He pointed toward the ground. Lie down. Hands behind your head. They obeyed. Coda kept them pinned with a low growl while Elias keyed his radio. Nora, this is Calhoun. I need security units to my coordinates. 2 hostiles detained. And patch me through to someone who can scramble aircraft now. Static. Then Nora's strained voice. Elias, we're working on it. Uplink is improving, but slowly. What's your status? He looked up at the burning trail Ava was carving through the sky. Bad, he said, and getting worse. He moved again, feet pounding earth and snow. Coda ran beside him like a streak of living muscle and instinct. When the base perimeter came into view, Elias saw Marines scrambling outside the barracks, confused, half-dressed, grabbing rifles, squinting at the sky. But none of them knew the truth. None of them had seen the underground room. None of them understood how close the enemy already was. Ava's voice whispered faintly from the radio again. Calhoun, if you hear me, tell my dad. Elias stopped in the middle of the clearing. No, he said sharply into the radio. You're not giving a last message. You're not dying today. Silence. Then, faintly, copy. Trying. The signal faded again. Elias looked toward the runway. There were aircraft there. One of them could still fly, if he could reach it. "Come on, Coda!" He ran, and the shepherd ran with him. The wind tore across the Skyhaven airfield as Elias sprinted toward the hangar, his breath sharp in the frozen Montana air. Coda ran beside him, paws thundering across hard-packed snow, ears pinned back with fierce purpose. The base was awake now, alarms sounding, Marines rushing out of the barracks, officers yelling orders they didn't fully understand. No one knew the scale of the threat yet. No one except him. And the sky was burning. Ahead, the runway stretched like a ribbon of steel under the pale morning sun. Smoke streaks cut across the horizon, spiraling downward. Signs of Ava's dying jet struggling to hold altitude. Elias could almost hear her heartbeat through the radio static still clipped to his gear. He shoved open the hangar door. Inside, rows of aircraft sat in ordered silence, training jets, surveillance birds, and two MQ-14 Guardian drones. Sleek, snow-white frames shaped like predatory wings. Maintenance crews were scrambling to power up systems, but the jammer interference made everything slower, clumsier, like trying to breathe through a wet cloth. Chief Technician Harper, a slim, sharp-boned woman in her early 30s with short black curls and an expression permanently stuck between exhaustion and irritation, looked up as Elias stormed inside. Her jumpsuit was smeared with oil, and a welding mask hung lopsided from her neck. "Calhoun, you're not cleared for flight ops today." "I'm not asking for clearance," Elias replied. "I need a Guardian online. Now." Harper blinked, confusion knitting her brows. "The jammers are still wrecking our uplink. These birds can't fly blind." "They won't," Elias said. "I'll guide them manually." "You'll what?" Before she could demand an explanation, another tremor rattled the hangar lights. Everyone froze. Even Coda stopped mid-stride. Slowly, like a dying star rolling across the heavens, Ava's aircraft slid lower into the valley. Harper's eyes widened. "Is that—" "Yes." "You think you can reach her?" "I don't think," Elias answered. "I have to." He moved toward the drone console, boots pounding against concrete. Harper hesitated for half a second, then followed with a reluctant curse. The dog that felt something before anyone did. Coda abruptly stopped beside the Guardian drone's wing. His entire posture changed, head lifting, nose quivering, eyes locked on the far edge of the valley, as if he sensed something approaching through the cold air. A soft whine escaped his throat. Then he pawed the ground once. Hard. Elias froze. The dog never did that without reason. Harper looked between them. "Calhoun, what's he doing?" Coda stepped forward again, staring at the sky, not at Ava's falling aircraft, but slightly above it, as if something invisible was moving there, something neither Elias nor Harper could see. Elias whispered, "What is it, boy?" Coda barked, a sharp, urgent warning, and suddenly, Elias knew. Ava wasn't the only one in the sky. He dropped into the drone control seat. "Harper, I need manual override on Guardian 1. Give me full thrust and thermal boosts." "That'll overload the battery pack." "Then it overloads. Do it." Harper swore under her breath, slammed her palm against a security pad, and typed in the override sequence. "Guardian 1 is yours. For the record, if this thing explodes, you owe me 6 months of paperwork. I'll buy you dinner instead." Elias grabbed the headset. Open bay doors. The hangar groaned as the massive doors slid open, letting a sweep of icy wind rush through. Guardian 1, sleek, knife-edged, built for aerial reconnaissance, stood ready. It wasn't a fighter. It wasn't meant to save falling pilots. But today it would try. Elias powered the engines. The drone hummed violently, metal trembling, wings igniting with a low halo of thrust. "Come on," he muttered. "Hold together for me." The turbine pitch climbed. Snow whipped up in spirals. Guardian 1 lifted from the ground. "Drone is airborne," Harper confirmed, shielding her eyes from the dust. "You're live." Elias used the manual joystick, an old-school override rarely touched outside emergencies, and sent the drone soaring into the sky. The valley rushed up in the camera view, speeding below like a churning river of pines and snow. Ava's voice crackled through the radio again. Engine 2 gone, fuel pressure dropping. Calhoun, I can't stabilize. His grip tightened. You're not dying on me, Hartley. Follow my signal. Stay with me. Trying, she gasped. I'm losing it. Guardian 1 gained speed, cutting through the air with a rising whine. Elias steered it toward the smoke column trailing Ava's jet. Then he saw it. A dark speck descending behind her. Not debris, a drone, enemy-made, sleeker than the Guardians, black, angular, predatory. Designed for one purpose, finishing what the jammers began. Elias cursed. Harper, we've got incoming drone pursuit. I'm not seeing it on radar. You won't. They're running optical stealth and passive tracking. Hartley's flare signature is enough to guide them. Harper blanched. Jesus, can Guardian 1 outrun it? No, but it can outthink it. He pushed the Guardian drone harder, forcing it past recommended thrust. Warning lights blinked, screaming for mercy. The valley flashed beneath them. Cliffs, fir trees, snow-choked ravines. Ava's aircraft swerved into view. Her T-7 was bucking like a wild horse, smoke trailing from the fuselage, wings trembling near stall speed. Through the drone camera, Elias could see her face in the cockpit, pale, focused, jaw clenched with willpower alone. Behind her, the enemy drone closed in. Harper whispered, Calhoun, if that thing reaches her, it won't. Elias angled Guardian 1 downward. Inertia fought him. The drone wasn't built to dive like this, but he forced it, metal groaning against the strain. The enemy drone flickered in the feed. Closer, closer. Ava didn't see it. Coda, mark! Elias yelled on instinct. Coda barked sharply beside him, as if answering. Elias pulled the joystick into a tight banking maneuver. Guardian 1 twisted sideways, slicing through the sky in a reckless arc that would have made any engineer faint. The enemy drone detected the motion and recalibrated, splitting its pursuit logic between Ava and Guardian 1. Yes, Elias whispered. Look at me. He sent a flare burst from Guardian 1, bright, blinding, hot. The enemy drone snapped toward the heat. Elias dove straight for the cliff wall. Harper gasped. You're going to crash. No, it is. Guardian 1 skimmed the rock face so closely the drone's camera vibrated from turbulence. Elias held the dive steady. 5 feet from collision. 3, 2. The enemy drone corrected too late. It slammed into the cliff in a silent explosion of shrapnel and sparks. Ava's jet shook in the distance but kept flying. Harper exhaled. Holy hell. How did... Not now, Elias said. We're not done. He redirected Guardian 1 toward Ava. Her aircraft was falling faster. Calhoun, Ava whispered, voice frayed. I'm out of altitude. Her jet dipped, one wing scraping a treetop, spinning into a tightening spiral. Elias felt something twist in his chest. Coda, he whispered. The shepherd pressed against his leg, eyes focused, breath steady. Elias steadied his hands. Guardian 1, final sequence, he murmured. Come on, girl. Let's bring her home. He angled the drone beneath Ava's aircraft. A desperate maneuver. A stupid maneuver. A necessary one. Ava's jet clipped the drone's wing, jarring both crafts, but the Guardian absorbed part of the fall, redirecting the spin just enough. The T-7 slammed into the snow-covered clearing below. Not softly, but survivably. Impact detected, Harper shouted. She's down, north clearing, half a mile. Elias was already moving. He grabbed his gear, sprinted out of the hangar, and ran with everything he had. Snow burst under his boots. Cold tore at his lungs. Coda charged ahead, guiding him with instinct alone. The valley echoed with stillness. Then, a thin curl of smoke, and a broken aircraft. Ava's aircraft. Elias Calhoun tore through the snow-dense clearing, Coda sprinting beside him like a streak of living instinct. The downed T-7 lay ahead, broken, steaming, half buried in the white earth. But the cockpit canopy had cracked open. Ava Hartley was alive. Barely. She was slumped against the fuselage, helmet cracked, blonde hair spilling from beneath it in tangled strands. Her skin was washed pale from strain. A thin line of blood traced her cheek. When Elias reached her, she looked up with glassy blue eyes, breath trembling. "You actually came," she whispered. "You didn't give me the option not to," Elias said, voice low, steady, gentle in a way only Ava ever seemed to bring out of him. He supported her weight as she tried to stand. Her flight suit, a pale blue-green fabric built for cold altitudes, was torn near the shoulder, revealing bruising underneath. She winced, but stayed on her feet. Coda circled her anxiously, nose brushing her leg as if counting her breaths. "I'm okay, boy," she murmured. But she wasn't. And the sky above them was anything but safe. A thunderous roar split the air. Both Elias and Ava turned. 3 FA-50 fighter jets tore across the valley mouth, sleek, needle-nosed silhouettes cutting through the cold morning light. Their engines rumbled like the growl of metal beasts, hunting. Ava's voice cracked. "They're coming back to finish the job." Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed her arm, steering her toward a narrow ridge path. "Move! Now!" They ran. The world exploded behind them. A strafing run ripped through the snowfield, dirt and ice thrown into the air like shards of broken bone. Elias shielded Ava as the shockwave slammed into them. Coda lunged ahead, barking furiously, as if cursing the sky itself. The aircraft looped wide, banking for another pass. Ava gasped. "Elias, we won't outrun them. I'm not planning to outrun them." His voice had changed, calm, cold, sharpened by memory. Ava recognized the tone instantly. She had only heard it once, years ago, when he spoke of the mission that took his team. He turned toward the ravine, snow swirling at his boots. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Ending this," he said. "Stay low. Keep behind me." Coda barked sharply, once, like an oath. Together, man and dog stepped out onto the ice-covered valley floor. The FA-50s split formation. 3 locked onto Ava's wrecked T-7. 3 angled down toward Elias. Hunting, trying to pin him in. Ava's eyes widened in horror. "Elias, they think you're a spotter. They're going to follow me," he said quietly. "Exactly where I want them." She inhaled sharply. "No, not that maneuver. Elias, you told me you'd never—" "It's the only way." Her throat tightened. Lead pursuit reversal. A suicidal tactic. A maneuver he swore he would never use again. Not since the day his team died copying his move under pressure. A maneuver that lived in his bones like a scar. Coda glanced up at him, sensing the shift. The cold determination. The acceptance. As if reminding him, not alone this time. Elias crouched, met the dog's eyes, and nodded. "Let's dance." Coda suddenly stopped. He stiffened, ears erect, nose lifted, muscles trembling. A single low whine escaped him. Not fear, premonition. He turned his head toward the mountains, staring into empty air. Elias followed his gaze. Nothing there. But if Coda sensed it, something was coming. Not the jets, not yet. Something else. A shadow of what was approaching. Elias swallowed hard. "Coda, what did you see?" The shepherd didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, slowly, he turned his head back to Elias and touched his hand with his nose. A gesture almost human, almost pleading. Ava shivered. It's like he knows the ending before we do. Elias felt the same chill, but there was no time. The jets were diving. The first FA-50 roared down the ravine. Elias sprinted into the valley, moving directly into the jet's path. A tactic no sane man would attempt. His boots pounded snow into powder. The jet's targeting system beeped rapidly, confused by a fast-moving ground target at close range. The second FA-50 tightened behind the first. The third hesitated briefly, adjusting for a tri-point kill zone. Ava watched from behind a boulder, her breath caught in her throat. "Elias, please." But he kept running. He angled left, toward the cliff wall. The first FA-50 dropped lower, air brakes whistling as the pilot tried to track him. The jet's nose dipped, following the bait. Elias jumped onto a narrow outcropping of rock, boots skidding. He threw his weight into a brutal turn and dove into the shadow of the cliff wall. The FA-50 corrected too fast, sucked into the valley's pressure pocket. A wind shear vortex spiraled down from the mountain. The jet wobbled, just an inch, just enough. Its wing clipped the stone. The aircraft spun sideways and slammed into the cliff in a burst of fire. Ava covered her mouth, tears involuntarily burning her eyes. One down. Coda barked, a fierce, vicious sound, almost victorious. The second jet swooped lower, pilot panicking at the sudden debris cloud. He cut too hard to maintain pursuit, losing speed. The pressure drop caught him at the wrong angle. His nose dipped. Too far. The FA-50 tumbled, spiraling helplessly before burying itself into the snow like a spear. Two down. The third jet roared upward, pulling away to avoid the same fate. Ava's radio crackled. "Calhoun, what the hell are you doing?" "Staying alive," Elias answered, breath harsh in the cold. "And making sure you do too." The remaining FA-50s regrouped higher in the sky, circling like birds of prey preparing a second strike. Ava wiped her face, trembling. "Elias, you can't keep outrunning jets." "I don't plan to." He pointed at the jet remnants below. "They're learning. They won't follow me low again. So what now?" "We climb." Ava stared at him. "We... what?" He motioned toward the ridge. "Higher ground. Make them change angles. Make them think. Pilots hate thinking." Coda ran ahead, leading the way. They reached the ridge just as the jets repositioned. 3 shadows above. 3 killers waiting for the perfect angle. Ava struggled to breathe. Her ribs hurt. Her head swam from adrenaline and concussion. "Elias," she whispered. "If they hit us here..." "They won't." "How do you know?" Elias slowly raised the radio. And for the first time, a voice answered that didn't belong to Ava. A burst of static, then a strong, authoritative voice echoed through the valley. "Ridge 1, this is Falcon Flight. We see your position." Ava's eyes widened. "No, it can't be." Elias smiled for the first time since dawn. 4 silver shapes streaked down from 12,000 feet, F-16s descending like thunderbolts, contrails burning bright behind them. Falcon Flight had arrived. The landing gear of the AT-6 screeched against the runway as Elias Calhoun brought the battered trainer aircraft down onto the Skyhaven airstrip. The wheels bounced once, hard enough to rattle his teeth, before settling into a shaky but controlled roll. The scent of hot fuel and scorched metal rushed through the cockpit vents, mixing with the bitter Montana winter air. Coda barked from the jump seat behind him, a sharp, relieved sound that cut straight into Elias's chest. "We made it," Elias exhaled. "Somehow." He brought the AT-6 to a halt near the hangar. Fire crews and medics swarmed the runway, but their movement was overshadowed by the thunder in the sky. 4 F-16s, Falcon Flight, sliced downward in a coordinated strike. Their contrails curled like silver whips behind them. Elias stepped out of the cockpit in time to watch the final act of the aerial battle. 3 FA-50s made one last desperate maneuver, breaking formation and scattering into 3 directions. It didn't matter. Falcon Flight hunted them like wolves on open snow. 2 AIM-9Xs found their marks. The last FA-50 tried to dive but was caught in a cross-pattern gun run, burst after disciplined burst, until its engine blew apart in a cloud of black fire. The Montana sky finally fell silent. A Marine nearby whispered, "Sweet Lord." 8 enemy aircraft neutralized. But Elias didn't celebrate. His eyes were on the medics carrying Ava toward the infirmary. And on Coda, tail lowered, gaze tracking every stretcher and every movement, until he saw her. Ava Hartley was pale, oxygen mask fogging with each breath, but conscious. Her blonde hair was matted with smoke and snow. Her pale blue eyes flicked from the medics to Elias as he approached. "Calhoun, you're okay," he said softly, kneeling beside the stretcher. She gave a weak smile. "If it weren't for you, I would have died in that valley." He shook his head, jaw tightening. "You flew that T-7 like a miracle. I only helped you land." A medic cleared his throat. "Sir, we need to get her inside." Ava reached out and grabbed Elias's glove, her fingers trembling. "Tell them," she whispered. "Everything you did. They need to know." Elias gave no answer. Ava was taken inside, but her words lingered like frost in the air. Minutes later, the base commander stormed into the hangar. Colonel Marcus Holt, tall, broad-shouldered, silver crew-cut, weathered jaw, marched like a man carved from granite. His uniform was immaculate despite the chaos around him. Deep lines carved his forehead, the kind that came from decades of carrying burdens heavier than metals. "Calhoun," Holt barked. "In my office, now." Elias followed without complaint. Coda padded at his side, silent but alert. Inside the command room, the lights glowed harsh and unforgiving. Ava sat in a chair in the corner, bandaged, pale, but determined to be present. Nora Bennett stood behind a console, headset around. Her neck, face still flushed from the adrenaline of restoring communication earlier. Colonel Holt didn't sit. He stared at Elias with a scrutiny sharp enough to cut steel. "Marine Calhoun," Holt said slowly, "please explain something to me." He lifted a tablet displaying the AT-6 flight log. "Who taught you to fly and attack aircraft in an active combat zone?" Elias stood straight. "No one, sir." Holt's eyebrow twitched. "No one?" "No one taught me this. I learned what I needed. And I didn't want to lose someone again." The room softened, just a fraction. Ava looked down at her lap. Nora swallowed hard. Even Holt's expression cracked slightly, revealing an older grief hidden beneath command. Elias continued quietly. "I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just wasn't ready to watch someone else die." Coda nudged his leg gently, as if punctuating the truth. The confession. Ava almost didn't make Ava suddenly sat up straighter. "Sir," she said, voice steady despite the pain, "if I may speak freely." Holt nodded. Ava's blue eyes locked onto Elias. "The enemy targeted me specifically." The room froze. She continued. "I saw their drone before I went down. It wasn't firing at random. It was scanning my aircraft, searching for a module in the nose cone. The APG-X7 radar testbed. They wanted it. They were trying to drive me low and force me to crash so they could retrieve it." Holt's face darkened. "That radar system is classified above your clearance level." Ava swallowed. "I know, but they knew it was there. Someone leaked its flight schedule." Nora whispered, "Oh my God." Elias's blood turned cold. Ava met Holt's gaze. "Sir, they weren't trying to kill me. They wanted to capture me." The words hit the room like a second explosion. Coda's ears twitched, reacting not to the sound but the shift in emotion. Colonel Holt pressed his palms into the table. "Major breach. High-level intelligence compromise." His voice grated low and dangerous. "This investigation will go straight to the Pentagon." Elias stepped forward. "Sir, whoever leaked the intel, they're not done." Holt nodded grimly. "Which is why I have another question, Calhoun." Elias tensed. Holt's stern eyes softened, just slightly. "Would you consider returning to Raider Command? We need men like you, men who act when the world hesitates." For a moment the room held its breath. Ava looked hopeful. Nora bit her lip. Coda tilted his head, sensing the weight of the moment. Elias inhaled slowly. "No, sir," he said at last. Ava's eyes widened. Nora frowned. Holt stared in surprise. Elias continued, I've spent years fighting battles that were already lost by the time we arrived. Raids, recon, damage control. He looked down at Coda, who met his gaze with warm amber eyes. But today proved something to me. Holt crossed his arms. And what's that? That the future won't be won by lone warriors or elite teams operating in the dark. Elias placed a hand gently on Coda's head. It'll be won by partnerships, by pilots and Marines and K-9 units working together, by instinct as much as strategy. He straightened his shoulders. I want to build something new, sir. Something that should have existed a long time ago. Ava whispered, What do you mean? A program, Elias said. Aerial K-9 Guardian Unit. Train pilots to work alongside ground Marines and combat dogs. Teach evasion, overwatch, terrain reading. The bond Coda and I share saved our lives. It can save others. Colonel Holt stared at him for a long moment. Then a slow, rare smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. Calhoun, that's one of the smartest ideas I've heard in 20 years of command. Ava exhaled shakily, relief softening her features. Nora grinned. Coda barked once, approving. Holt nodded. You'll have my support. Full resources. Write the curriculum. I'll send it to the Pentagon myself. For the first time that day, Elias felt the tightness in his chest ease. He wasn't going back to his old life. He was building a new one. 3 weeks passed, and Skyhaven changed. Marines jogged across the runway with K-9 partners. Pilots practiced rapid evasion drills with drone overwatch. Ava, recovered and stubborn as ever, insisted on being the first official trainee, claiming she had unfinished business with gravity. And at the center of it all was Elias Calhoun, calmer, steadier, and finally carrying a purpose that didn't bleed. But Coda was different. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the Montana peaks and cast long amber shadows across the snow, Elias stood outside the hangar reviewing flight reports. Coda suddenly lifted his head, his ears pricked, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. He didn't growl, didn't bark. He simply stared, silent, focused, as if hearing a whisper carried on the wind. Elias walked to his side. What is it, boy? Coda didn't look away. A feeling stirred in Elias's chest, a familiar mix of warning and wonder. He placed a hand on the shepherd's neck. Yeah, Elias murmured, a faint smile tugging at his lips. I hear it too. He looked toward the mountains, the same direction Coda was watching. Something new is coming. Coda's tail flicked once. Not fear, but readiness. And the wind shifted, soft, cold, full of promise. In the end, Elias Calhoun's journey wasn't simply about courage in the sky or survival in the valley. It was a reminder of something older, quieter, and far more powerful. The belief that God places people, moments, and even animals in our path for a reason. Some call it instinct, some call it destiny. But those who have lived through storms know it often feels like a small miracle, a whispered guidance from above at the exact moment when strength alone isn't enough. Coda's intuition, Ava's will to live, and Elias's refusal to surrender were not accidents. They were threads woven together by a hand greater than their own. And just like that, each of us carries moments when we're pushed to the edge, moments when life feels like a narrow valley with danger closing in. Yet time and time again, grace arrives, through people who stand beside us, through unexpected help, or through the quiet courage we didn't know we had. So as you finish this story, may you remember that you are never alone in your battles. May God watch over you and your loved ones, give you strength in your darkest hours, and place His protection over every step of your journey. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and help us bring more stories of hope, courage, and unseen miracles to those who need them most. May God bless you, protect you, and guide you always.